You're tuned into another episode of the AER Podcast. Streaming on Apple, Google Play, Spotify, iHeart, and YouTube, this podcast features interviews of individuals in the coatings industry. Listen every month wherever you get your podcast. Stay in the loop by following us on Instagram and Facebook at AirEquipmentSA. Subscribe, rate, and visit us online at air-equipment.com. Now, enjoy another episode of the AER Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the AER Podcast. My name is Jason Weber and I'm your host. This episode we have Ryan Looker, who's the Territory Manager for Industrial Sales from Global Finishing Solutions. Hey Ryan, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing, Jason?
We're doing pretty good. I want to first thank you for joining me. I know life's been a little busy, but I don't know about for you guys. It seems like business is starting to pick up, so it's nice to kind of etch away a little hour here, 30 minutes here, so we can do this podcast.
Absolutely. I think things are coming back to life. People are looking at getting projects in, before the year end, and we have been busy. That's true.
That's good because everybody needs that after the 2020 everybody had.
Right. Absolutely. Yep.
So if we want to jump right into it, well, actually, you know what? Before we get into the products of Global Finishing, let's get a little bit of your background. How did you end up in this industry, and kind of take us down that road a little bit?
So I started at GFS now. It's going back probably 6-7 years. Started working in their estimating department, so basically designing equipment, designing and costing equipment, working with engineering to develop the bid specifications. From there, I moved up to training manager. I kind of did that for about a year. So that was educating people on what GFS offers and what kind of equipment we provide. And then moved up to territory manager here, where I cover the states in the Midwest.
Yeah, and if people are confused about hearing states in the Midwest and saying, wait a minute, Texas is not the Midwest. I'm guessing you kind of acquired us because we're part of ICAP now.
That is correct. So you guys are all under one umbrella. So you guys are pretty much nationwide under the companies you guys got, and you cover anything and everything. So I say primarily home-based Midwest, but yes, I've picked up quite a few states and done business all over the nation as a result. So
let's just go right into Global Finishing. So I mean, if people have been in the coatings industry for a while, they should know the name Global Finishing, but what kind of products does Global Finishing offer?
So we manufacture and design entire finishing lines. So I guess when I say that, we start from what do we need to do to prepare the part all the way to a finished product. So when you start out, a lot of times there could be a blasting process that prepares the part. We provide blasting closures, dust collection equipment to start the process. Maybe then the product is going to move along to a cleaning process, or maybe cleaning and etching is part of the process, and you do chemical treatment in a wash booth. So then we also provide wash booths, inline washers as well. Moving on from there, you go to potentially the next step is your dry off oven, right? So you're drying your part prior to paint or powder. Moving on to the next thing, paint booths is probably what we're most well known for, going back to the JBI days. And then also powder booths, so application rooms for applying both paint and powder. And then as it leaves there, depending on the process, you may be going into an oven again, a cure oven. And anything and everything that moves that part along, helping to integrate conveyor, that's all part of what GFS does.
Okay, yeah, man. To be honest, you guys are pretty new to me, just because we didn't really do business with Global Finishing until we joined ICAP. So I honestly, the only part of y'all's company that I even knew was paint and powder booths. So that's new to me right there. And
I think that can be something that is thought across the industry, and I think it's because we've cast such a large shadow over the paint industry, paint booths especially, and that had to start with the previous owner Jerry Bowie back in the JBI days, was assisting the government with large paint booths for defense and military. So we kind of became the go-to for that. Hey, if the government trusts these guys, so do we. And I think that's how we really, got our base and got our start. And from there, the painting industry has evolved and continues to evolve. We added products in that would also be required in a finishing process. And that's how we got to where we are today.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those are all pretty crucial parts of a entire finishing line, and it kind of fits in exactly with ICAP's motto of from prep to finish. So,
Absolutely.
kind of everything from you start with a raw material and you end up with a finished product at the end.
That's right. That's right.
But I did want to jump just into the booths, because
Yep.
I know you guys, that's kind of, I guess, your wheelhouse, if you will.
Yep.
Or at least what you're most well known for. And so what kind of booths does Global Finishing offer?
So on the paint side especially, there are a variety of booths. I'll say kind of as an entry-level booth, the booth that, a lot of companies start out with is an open face booth. You typically see that it's got two walls, a ceiling, and what we call an industrial chamber. So a full height, full width exhaust chamber on the back side of it. I say these are beginning or entry level booths, but this same design can be constructed with support structure. You could run a monorail through it. You can bring parts in that way. You could notch a crane slot in there and utilize an overhead crane in there. So from every design, there is a custom configuration to it that lends to a customer's process. So that those are probably what a lot of people are familiar with as an entry level booth. From there, you can move into more of a truck, or we call large equipment booth. So what you have in that is typically a little bit taller booth, maybe potentially a little bit wider, entry doors on the front, potentially exit doors as well. Depending on what you're looking for on your finishing process, you can do it one of two ways. You can put a filtered set of doors on the front and your exhaust chamber on the back, and then what happens is your fan will draw through the exhaust chamber, draw through the front intake filters, which removes all the dust and contaminants from the process as it draws it into the booth. To even step that up a notch, we'll say you can pressurize by way of a fan or an air makeup unit. Then you put solid doors on the front and the back. And what comes along with an air makeup unit, especially for us up here in the north, is you can heat the space as well. So right about now up here in Wisconsin, we're staring at snow and 30-degree weather. So we need to heat even to get to ambient. So an air makeup unit is pretty crucial to heat the air for that space. You could also cure in a paint booth. So we can raise a paint booth up to a cure temperature for paint. So maybe we're discharging 140, 160 degrees into a booth to do paint and then cure in a booth as well. So those are the main two. We do have options as well where it can always be taken to one another level if someone is looking for a certain environment. When I talk a conditioned environment, so a certain temperature that a paint applies the best at, a certain humidity level, we can provide paint or air makeup units with condensing units that can temper air to exactly what the customer needs for the process. So again, I mean, there's a lot of variety in construction and options, and a lot of it just is dictated by what the customer has available for space, what they need, what they require.
Okay, yeah, and I gotta back up a little bit. You said you guys are looking at snow up there in the Midwest, and we're down here complaining because it's like 47.
Yeah, I had this conversation with my son the other day, and he was talking about how, um, the temp outside. Dad, I really liked 70 is perfect, and this and then I said, yeah, I mean, you get to some places in the country, and 70 is actually chilly, so we're pretty happy when we can stay above 40 up here. So I I know it's kind of what you're used to though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was 39 when I left my house this morning, and we were complaining. But this
Yes.
for us
Yep.
at least, this is only a couple days. We'll be back up in the 70s.
Right, right. We're staring at 6 to 8 months of this stuff. So,
Yeah. Um. So I one thing we run into a lot, and I'm sure it's because of the emergence of online sales, but we run into people. If we're quoting a custom built booth or a custom made booth by Global, um, someone out there will kind of come back with a knockdown price that they found online,
yep.
and it maybe looks good up front, but what are the reasons you would want to go with a custom built booth versus buying one of these quote unquote one size fits all booths from a bargain site online?
Yep. So I would say the first thing, and what we try to do with all of our customers is we engage them and we want to talk to them about what their process is. Um, you're absolutely correct. Like a one size fits all isn't the best for every application. So a lot of times when you find those bargain basement online booths, they're designed for a particular industry. So a lot of them are designed for more of an auto refinish um, style painting application. So the issue there is those booths are designed for a lower airflow, considering that what you're going to park in there is going to fill up a majority of the space. So in a car refinish environment, they might have where we would specify 100 feet per minute inside a booth, they might be designed for 75 feet per minute, assuming that 3/4 of the space is going to be filled up with product. Um, Airflow is the biggest thing behind a good paint coat or a good paint job. So it's crucial to have the airflow that's actually designed for the parts you have. I've seen customers use these booths in something where they were doing smaller parts, or what ends up happening is because they don't fill the space, they don't have enough volume to move the overspray to the exhaust filter to the chamber. So what ends up happening is the paint drops throughout the booth. So the particular booth that comes to mind, they were painting a bunch of small parts yellow, and the entire booth from ceiling to floor was all painted yellow as a result of not having that proper airflow that will take that overspray to their exhaust chamber, to their filters, where it should be. Um, the other thing is when you do the one size fits all, even we typically recommend at minimum for the ease of the applicator, the sprayer, the painter, that there's 3 feet surrounding a part on all sides, 3 feet above, and what that allows is enough room for a painter to move around, paint the front of the part, paint the back side of the part. Sometimes you'll see, I've been in locations where they leave the front door open and half the part's hanging out. So, in theory, if you're painting the second half of the part, it shouldn't be a big deal that the front half is hanging out. But sometimes these booths are designed to be enclosed. They're designed for the doors to be closed, and it just keeps all of that dust and dirt and contaminants from coming in from the shop. So that's another thing. If a lot of these other booths can have just the open face, I mentioned that as an entry level, depending on what you're trying to accomplish in your process. More times than not, it's probably a good idea, depending on the cleanliness of your facility, is to put some sort of door on there. So then you're enclosing your paint process from everything else you have going out on that floor. What happens is a paint booth with no doors acts as a vacuum cleaner for the entire facility. So if you have some sort of dust sanding application that's just down the way, all of that's going to migrate right to your paint booth. The other thing is customers will, I've kind of mentioned, maybe they're buying booths too small. I've also seen a customer buy booths that are way too large for their part size. Why that's a bad thing is is the way you calculate airflow in a booth is by taking either the width times the height times the space to calculate a foot per minute through that, an airspeed. And a downdraft, it's done the same way, width times length times whatever your downdraft speed is looking for, typically 50 feet per minute. So if you go larger in any direction, height, whatever it might be, that actually translates to extra energy usage. So you're going to have larger fans if it's an enclosed booth, a larger air makeup unit, processing heated air for a larger space. All of this comes to your bottom line because maybe you bought a booth that was cheaper from the beginning, but now your operating costs are a lot higher to operate it. So I guess those are a few of the things that I see. There's definitely opportunity to utilize floor space in a building as well. In a lot of cookie cutter booths, standard stuff, you might have the air makeup unit sitting indoors right next to the booth. We do a lot where we're putting the air makeup on top of the roof. It saves floor space. You might be putting it on top of the building and ducting down through the roof. You can put it on an outer wall, duct in through that outer wall. These are all things that save on your footprint, and I know every facility is lacking and would love to have more floor space. So those are probably my three main things: airflow, saving on floor space, and then the energy savings involved with going custom.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's something that people need to really look at because all too often you see, maybe they'll save $1,500, $2,000 up front on the cost of a booth, but you're looking at your rework if you're having, like you said, dust when you're spraying, and your energy cost. That could eat up that $2,000 in a one job. So
you're correct. Your buyback on the proper booth may only take a few months to a year, and you're in the booth. That's going to save you time and money.
Right. So then that kind of rolls us in right into proper maintenance. This is something that I'm sure you've seen a lot. We have too, and it's just. I think another thing is when you get these cookie cutter booths, someone buys it, they ship it to you, you put it up. You're not trained on how to maintain this booth and keep it working properly all the time. So what are some, I guess, maintenance tips that you and Global Finishing would recommend?
Yeah, I guess kind of jog my memory. You're talking about purchasing a standard booth offline and online and bringing it into your facility. The one thing that a lot of those don't consider, and we're going back to airflow again here, is what is the customer going to do with their ductwork? Is it a straight up duct stack? Are we exiting a back building and going up? All of these things, when you have to offset ductwork, add static pressure to the fan. So what happens is you have a side effect of system performance on a lot of those booths. So what'll happen is you put the offset in, the fan runs into a little bit, static pressure isn't moving the proper volume of air. And what happens in that case is you have, again, paint overspray that is not getting to a filter. So the other instance where this can happen is not changing your filters regularly, leaving a filter on too long. So if a filter becomes fully loaded, what happens is you're putting added static on the fan that direction as well. So if it isn't able to draw through that filter, it's again going to influence your airflow inside the booth. So what ends up happening is, again, paint drops in the booth, or the fan keeps pulling, and what happens is it's going to draw that overspray through your filter into your exhaust chamber, potentially throwing it up your stack, painting the roof of your building. I've heard horror stories of a sidewall exhaust in a facility where now we're ejecting overspray because we're not changing our filters, out a sidewall, and we're painting cars in the parking lot. So that's crucial that you keep up on it and that you're maintaining and changing out your filters. So the two things that I hear when I visit facilities, the first one for having a good booth and a good conditioned booth is airflow. The second one is visibility. So Another maintenance point is if you don't purchase the right size booth, if the ceiling's too low, you may end up painting the covers of your light fixtures. Okay, so even with the right space, if you don't change your filters, your paint overspray will hang longer. And what ends up happening is it does apply to the sides of the booth, covers the light covers. One good maintenance technique would be they do make peel coats that go over the lens of a light fixture, because once that's done, once it's clouded, your light's limited in your booth, and you're not going to be happy about it. So you can apply those on. You spray every so often when your lights are getting too cloudy or you don't have the light levels you want. You can peel it off and put a new clear one on. So those are two of the biggest things that I see, that I hear from painters every day when I go to a facility is, maintaining the right airflow. We typically walk over, we take a look at their manometer or whatever they have to read the filter static. We look at that and determine more times than not they should have already replaced their filters a while ago. And the other one is visibility, and I always recommend that the same thing, the way to protect their lenses on their lights so that they don't have to deal with cloudy lenses.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's kind of the next point I wanted to make. Something we really hammer on our customers is the need for that manometer. And for people that don't understand what that is, what exactly is a manometer, and how does it read, and how does it tell you when you need to change your filters?
Yes. So by code, national code, NFPA, it is required to have a visual reading for filters. So you should have some sort of visual gauge that tells you when you should be replacing filters. So what a manometer does is it has an air line that leads to the backside of a tube that leads to the backside of a filter, so it can read pressure through the filter. We do have it. What happens is it'll read it. You set it initially based on no filters, zero it out. As you place a filter in there, you'll get your reading point of what your starting static pressure is of your filter. Our typical filters are at about, I believe it's like 0.15 inches of static. So that is a place where you would mark on your manometer to say, here's where our filters start at. This is their clean point. And then the next thing you do usually is if you look at your spec data sheet for your filter, it will tell you what your filter is designed to load to. And that can be, depending on your filter selection, it can be all over the board. There's thin filters, there's thicker filters that will accept more loading. Our typical, again, is around 0.5 inches of static pressure. So anywhere in between that is an acceptable working range. When it hits that high point, that's the time when you should be shutting your booth down, removing all your filters and disposing of them properly, and then putting your new filters out, what then brings your gauge back to that initial clean filter point.
Okay. Yeah, and it's amazing how many booths out there you run into that have no gauge or anything. And that probably goes back to these online bargain booths that you find online probably don't have that, or have it as an option and not standard.
My thought is they probably don't have a fully staffed engineering and design team. At these companies, they're just sheet metal benders, and they build it, and they're not building it to any code. They're just basically duplicating what they've seen out there on the market.
So there's another cost associated with it if you either have to buy one later, or if even worse, you're getting, fined by your county for not having been up to code.
That's correct. An inspector that is up on his code is going to walk in. First time he sees a booth, he's going to ask you, where's your gauge, where's your manometer, whatever his terminology is, and the customer's going to have to say, I don't know it. I didn't come with one. And there is the potential, depending on the inspector, to shut them down to make that right.
Okay. And then talking about your exhaust filters, because those are the ones you generally change the most. I know Global Finishing offers what I think y'all's brand is the Wave filter.
Correct.
And how is that compared to either your standard fiberglass or your paper arresters that you see in a lot of these facilities.
Yep. So the two things that make our wave filter special. First is the patented design. If you look at a filter, at our wave filter, you'll see it immediately. It actually has a wave, kind of an up and down wave pattern to it, multiple of them across the face of the filter. So I've seen them installed a couple different ways. That wave is actually supposed to be installed horizontally on the booth, in the exhaust chamber. And what that does is, as the overspray starts to collect on there, it limits the amount of runoff that you have from a filter down to the floor. So you'll see some of these that are just a flat filter, and they're not only changing filters, but they're having to clean up paint that's on the floor, more paint. If you ride any filter too long, you're going to have that, but it is designed to limit that, because it will catch some of that runoff that is happening on that filter. The second thing with the wave, if you look at it, it is a thicker, more robust filter than a lot of those thinner fiberglass filters you'll see out there. So what's happening is there's a lot better efficiency of collection and less pass through. So again, what you don't want to do, and what can be a safety hazard, is if you're using a filter that allows pass through to then paint the inside of your chamber, paint your exhaust stack. Anytime you have paint overspray collected anywhere, there is the potential for combustibility, and it's not a good thing. It can also shorten the life of your fan. So having a filter with a higher efficiency that will limit pass through, that's what the wave gives you. It also is rated to hold a lot more paint. So a lot of people will go to a thinner, cheaper filter because it's just a cost thing, right? So if you put a wave filter in and it lasts you, I don't know exactly how much longer, but if it lasts you longer in the long run and doesn't do and saves you on time for cleanup, it may be a better bet for you to go with that right from the beginning instead of the cheaper filter. Again, if you're looking at it just from a dollars aspect, length of filter, how long it lasts, has to be factored in as well.
Right, and that's not all how many filters you're going through, but also the downtime of your guys not painting and changing the filters as often. If you're changing them out 3-4 times a week instead of twice a week,
right,
you gotta factor that downtime, especially if the most common size we see is 20 by 20 panels.
Yep.
And changing those out is not just a quick process. It takes a while.
It does, and that's unfortunately some of the stuff I see is companies that go with a cheaper filter. They get loaded so quickly. They should be changing them multiple times a day, sometimes depending on what kind of volume they're spraying, and because they load so quickly, they just ignore it. And what happens is it does pass through. They load up and then paint drops, and their booths just are covered in overspray, which just doesn't make for a good paint environment. So there's a lot of things that are side effects of going with a cheap filter over just saving the pennies you do on the front end.
Right. Well, I mean that's all I got today. Did you have anything else you wanted to add about global finishing?
Not necessarily. I guess I did touch on it. I guess where I feel like GFS does excel is we are interested in learning the process, having the conversations with our customer, and providing the correct solution. The way that we do that is we do have, as I stated before, a full engineering and design staff. We've been around for 40 plus years. So if you have an idea or a need for a booth, we've done it at one time or another. So there's the experience level, there's the dedication to resources, and the dedication to do things the right way. And that's where I think GFS really separates themselves from some of our competitors.
All right, Ryan, well, I want to thank you for joining me. And if any of the listeners want any information about any global finishing products, reach out to Air Equipment at 210-223-3157 or visit us online at air-equipment.com. or you can also visit any of the ICAP companies, which is icapcompanies.com. Ryan, thanks again for joining me and spending some time with us today.
Not a problem, Jason. This was a good time.
All right, thanks, and we'll see you guys on the next episode of the 8ER Podcast.